Why are you doing this?
I never thought I was going to start a company. So if I look at the African continent, we have so many things going against us. I have so much respect for any founder that that quits their job full time and tries to build a company, whether it's a small corner shop, whether it's an ice cream store, whether it's a tech company, whether it's a small website, because there's a lot of pain that comes with it. 2017, I finished grad school. I decided not to take a job formally. I moved back to Tanzania, bootstrapping Nala, staying in my mom's house. 2018, I get a co-founder to join me. I remember one of my employees asked me, Benji, what is the problem we're solving? Because of the pandemic, I started seeing increase in cross-border payments because people couldn't fly and carry cash.
The 99%, that is
like I always say payments in Africa 1% built, and I really think that. I'll give you an example. I think over the next 20 years, the most funded VC-backed type of business in Africa is still going to be fintech.
One thing that I have to commend you is that I think you've really figured out how to be a CEO of a B2C company.
In 2022, we were about 8 employees at the company. Okay.
2022?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You guys grew like crazy.
Yeah, it was, man, the last 20 months, like from 7 people to 150.
Many people are having the conversation that building a B2C business is one of the hardest things you can ever do. In Africa, harder. Yeah. Anywhere else in the world, hard, right? And then, B2B is the way to go, right? It's easier. Maybe the sales cycle is a bit longer, but at least you get customers and you get them for a couple of years and you can keep innovating there. But individual customers are not very loyal to one product. So if they see a better product that has better rates, they'll just jump on it. Becomes very hard to retain them. So churn is really crazy. But what's your experience building a B2C business? What are the strategies that you've seen work and what doesn't work?
Now, B2C in Africa, I would agree. I think I would definitely build more B2B if I was in Africa. When you raise venture capital money, they expect 50x returns. It's like, are you going to grow your business 50 times? And what does that look like? It's tough for me to say this, but you can't sell services so people can't afford those services. Well, the first question I always ask people is, they should ask themselves why 5 times. Like, why do you want to start this company? Okay, why? Okay, why? And see what the answer is by the 5th why. I remember when I applied to business school, I'll show you this email, I got rejected. And I responded to the rejection. Look at how what date? 2015, right? Wait, would I read it out loud?
Thanks for your update. I accept my Harvard rejection. I believe you're making the biggest mistake of your life by not accepting me. My question to you is entrepreneurship for everyone?
No.
Benjamin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
What's up with the slides, man?
Yo, man, these slides are going global. One day they're going to be in a museum, man. I'm just telling you. Gotta. So it started off as a joke, and then it was 2 things. One was like a work bet, but the other one was like my friends were like, yo, those are really ugly slides. And like somebody's like, I bet you can't wear them for 100 days. I'm like, me? Don't bet against me. So it just started being a thing. And so I started wearing them and actually really comfortable. So then I started wearing them and I realized as I was working towards 100 days that as a founder, you're speaking in many different places. And then it was starting to get awkward because I'm like, wow, I'm about to go on stage. If it's a small classroom, I'd like speak in front of the whole company, but I'm wearing slippers. And I was like, okay, cool. So there's awkward. But then what it actually taught me was more about just doing something.
Yeah.
And then it normalizes it. So then after I hit 100 days, I stopped wearing my slides and everybody kept asking me, where's your slides? And I'd go to some event and the people are like, oh yeah, by the way, he's going to wear slippers when he shows up. So people preface to people. And so I show up there with regular. She's like, wait, where's your slides? I said, oh. So now I'm like, feel guilty when I don't wear it. And then the slides actually got me invited back to Buckingham Palace the 2nd time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What was the reason?
So first time I got invited to Buckingham Palace was I got a letter from the palace about Commonwealth Day. They said like they'd like to invite 1 person or 2 people from every country that was part of the Commonwealth, British Commonwealth. Cool. So I go there, they write me a card, and the card literally says, like, it's a formal invitation, like it mailed to you. It's not even like email, it's a mail to you. And on it says, for dress restrict, and it says you can wear a formal suit or formal national dress.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, how am I going to get my slides in this Buckingham Palace? And you can't carry anything. You can only carry your cell phone and your passport when you're going to Buckingham Palace. So my friend's like, no, there's no way you can do it. I'm like, cool, I'm going to take my slides to Buckingham Palace. So I pull up to Buckingham Palace and I get there. I was a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, man, I'm all the way here. I've never been invited to Buckingham Palace. What am I going to tell my mom if I get sent back?
Yeah.
And there's no shoe store outside. I can just quickly pop up and like go buy shoes. So I get into Buckingham Palace and they go to security. And the two security guys put me on the side. I was like, excuse me, sir, I can come over here. I was like, yeah. Like, we're wondering if you read the dress code requirements. Now I'm wearing this like blue Nigerian outfit and the slides. And I was like, yeah, I did. I was like, it says formal national dress. This is my formal national dress. And they look up down on my feet and they look up at me. I just keep a serious face. I say, this is our formal national dress. And the guy's like, looks at his fellow security guard and looks at him and is like, right. Oh yeah, sure. You can go straight in. And like, that's another one point. He's like, but me, he's wearing Nike slides. So then when King Charles came out to greet everybody, one of his assistant, like peers that he works with, this guy called Steven, saw my slides. And then, so after I met King Charles, like 20 seconds or 30 seconds, just had it briefed and he walks off. Then when he left, Steven came back to me. He's like, hey, what's the story about the slides?
Yeah.
And I told him, I thought that story was amazing. They're like, what are you doing next month? Like November something. I was like, oh, I should be in London. He's like, okay, cool. Well, would you like to come back to Buckingham Palace? I was like, wow, what? He's like, yeah, I would love to have you around. So the slides actually got me back into Buckingham Palace. And now they just become a thing because every time I go somewhere, people are like, oh, I don't think you'll wear it there.
Yeah.
2 days ago, I was invited to see President Kagame here at the State House. And I was like, there's no way you're going to wear slides. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, I'll wear slides. And I'm also not trying to be disrespectful. I'm also trying to make sure that, as a founder, you get used to rejection. So you start to get a thrill of liking to see, okay, will I get rejected?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? Okay, they'll make me wear somebody else's shoes or, they're not going to like send me back home. So I'm like, sure, why not try it, And so now it's become a thing and I'm like the slides guy.
Yeah. And the thing is that you don't announce it. You don't say that I'm going to wear this.
Yeah.
I just,
you just pull up with it. And, see what happens.
Yeah. They can't do anything. It's, they're on a tight timeline. So they're like, yeah, just get it.
Yeah. Like, all right, in and out. Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. So if you look back, right, at your entire entrepreneurial journey, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Why are you building Nala?
I never thought I was going to start a company. I was in Dar es Salaam, bumming around in high school. Didn't do well in high school. And my grades are public. If you type Benjamin Fernandes A levels, they're public. You could see that. It's like 2 U's, a D, and an E. And yeah, I think, recognizing the importance of financial payments and the global payments ecosystem, what impact you can create is really important for me. So if I look at the African continent, we have so many things going against us. It's frankly a ticking time bomb. You have 1.3 billion people today. It's going to be 2.5 billion by 2050. And we don't have enough resources created or value created locally. There's not enough jobs for people. So what's going to happen in the next 20 years? Like, we need to figure out what ways we can increase trade locally in the continent and create various sources of income for people, whether it's software engineers that earn dollars and spend locally, whether it's people that can be entrepreneurs and sell their products internationally, whether it's goods and services that can create it digitally. And all of those mean payments infrastructure to be built out properly. And so as I think about what I want my impact on the world to be, it's like, okay, 100 years from today, we're all dead and gone. And I look back, I want to make sure we're around like Coca-Cola, where people are like, wow, like Nala enabled global trade to happen to these markets in the world that were often overlooked. And that's what I want us to be around for, is the work that we did to create equity everywhere for opportunity for people in these different markets that are often overlooked.
Interesting. And so how did you come up with the problem, specifically this problem, right? Was it, you were in a diaspora and you couldn't send money back home and then, the idea clicked, or you read a paper and then you were like, yeah, let me, how did you come up to the conclusion that, okay, I have to build something like this? Because a lot of people had tried it I'm assuming, right? And are still trying. But how did you, what led you to this specific problem and the solution actually?
Yeah, look, building any company is hard. So that's why I have so much empathy for anybody trying to build any company. Like, I have so much respect for any founder that tries, like, that quits their job full time and tries to build a company, whether it's a small corner shop, whether it's a ice cream store, whether it's a tech company, whether it's a small website, because there's a lot of pain that comes with building that. So for me, 2017, I finished grad school. I decided not to take a job formally. I moved back to Tanzania, bootstrapping Nala, staying in my mom's house. 2018, I get a co-founder to join me. We applied to Y Combinator. This is like my 6th time applying to YC.
Same idea?
Evolved. So it was like a domestic payment service.
Okay.
It was a different business completely.
Yeah.
And finally, after 6 times, we get into YC. So 2019, we get into YC. It's a big high. Like, yeah, we got into YC. 1 week before demo day, my co-founder quits. So when you're taking a co-founder quits, and you're trying to raise money as a tech company, it makes it 10 times harder to raise money. So a bunch of investors who were offering money pulled out because I had to tell them this person was leaving. So like we're out. 2020, we launched this product. I mean, we had the product going. It was like small. It wasn't scaling. It wasn't growing much. And that kind of like plateaued. We weren't growing month on month. And, you have to be honest with yourself, because as a founder, the only person you're lying to at the end of the day is yourself. And if you're asking yourself what problem you're solving, you can't answer that question, that you're not probably solving anything. And I remember one of my employees asking, Benji, what is the problem we're solving? And he was this junior intern. And I went home and I thought about it for a long time. And I was like, he's right. Our retention sucks. Nobody loves this product. I've made a big mistake here. We haven't built something people need and love. And so 2020 happens. Pandemic hits. We've got to pivot this business. So I had to fire everybody. Went down to a small team all over again and hit the restart button. Now, in the world of cross-border payments, because of the pandemic, I started to see an increase in cross-border payments because people couldn't fly and carry cash. So there's a massive uptake of digitization of digital payments that happened literally because of COVID. That was spearheaded to the drive for mass digital adoption of cross-border payments. Now, when I lived in the US, I used to send money home to my parents. So I've used every single app, all my competitors' apps. Yeah. So I have them on my phone and all my friends use them too. So I kind of knew which one was good for what, because while I was living in Tanzania, I was still sending myself money. So I was like, okay, cool. I think this one is good for this one is good for this. So in 2021, made the decision to pivot the business to be cross-border payments. Now everybody was like, dude, like you have no experience in cross-border payments. You have no understanding of how this works and so on. And I think that was probably the best part, because I was naive and I was going in more curiously thinking that, okay, what if this works? And I was more asking questions like, why does this have to be this way? Like, oh, it's always been that. Oh, but why? And they couldn't answer. Like, oh, if they don't know the answer, I should probably try to find out why. And I was told, don't build a cross-border payments business by so many people, even experts in the industry, even these famous researchers. Like I'd go on the UND website and I'd read like a paper that somebody wrote and email them like, hey, by the way, I'm thinking of doing this. They're like, don't, like, it's a bad idea. Like, there's no way. Like TransferWise is already a multi-billion-dollar business. Remitly is already a multi-billion-dollar. So both going public next year, you'll never be able to compete. And I said, okay, I have 6.5 months of runway left. Let's try it. So that's how the whole push to even try starting to build that happened in 2021. Now, people see Nala today, 2025, but they don't know that 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21 had to happen for the last 2 years to happen. So while everybody says like, oh yeah, wow, Nala like came out of nowhere, I'm like, bro, this is like year 9 for me and like trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
Like you're like year 1 and you're complaining. Like, it's a long journey. I mean, we almost ran out of cash 6 times. I was borrowing money from friends to make payroll. Like, again, this is like 3 employees. So, I mean, it's been quite a journey, but that's kind of how we got to cross-border payments.
Yeah. And so what was the thing that was pushing you to still have that tenacity of saying, okay, we're running out of money, but I still want to borrow? Like, what was the pull to that problem?
I wanted to know that I tried my best. to make it happen. And if we could build something people love, people would come back and use it again. So if we could retain customers and they were coming back to use the product again, then we've built something here. And so I said, cool, I want to make sure I've given it my best final shot.
What was the final shot? Did you know? After 6, 7, 28 times?
Yeah, I was just, I was like, okay, for the cross-border payments thing, I was like, I never lived in England before. So we're starting sending money from the UK to East Africa. So I'm literally texting my Tanzanian friends, do you know any Kenyan in the UK that I can introduce to? And like one person, yeah, this is one person on WhatsApp. I'm pinging this person on WhatsApp, they're not responding to me. I'm like, install this app and enter your card details. And it's like, bro, like, they're like, who are you? So then I finally got to the UK. I flew through Uganda because Tanzania was red listed. And then I got to the UK that way. And I'd go to East London, Dagenham, Barking, and Ilford, just far East London. And I'd sit outside the mosque and the church. So I'd go to the mosque on Fridays and then church on Sundays. And I'd stop people like, are you Kenyan? Because I'd see the Kenyans would wear their bracelet, right? So it was really easy to detect who was Kenyan. It's like, you're Kenyan, right? And I speak Swahili fluently. So that was how we started getting our first customers. And I'll show you today on my phone. Like our first 500 customers, if I type in on my contacts here, user, first 500 customers right there.
Oh, wow.
So I would meet them outside of church or at the mosque. And I'm like, hey, can you test using this app out? And man, people thought I was a scammer. I was reported to police. Like, dude, I got called up on. People like, yo, there's this Pakistani guy. He's being really weird outside. I'm like, yeah, I'm just trying to build this company. And yeah, like that's how we got from 500 customers. And then just started like, okay, how do you get to 1,000 customers? How do you get to 1,500 customers? And from there to 500,000 customers today, 3 years later, it's unreal.
So it's a journey.
Yeah.
So what was the problem that, your competitors then were having? Or, what was the problem that customers were having, let's say, when using these other apps?
Yeah. I think, look, the market's still big. So like, even though we've grown quite a bit, there's still massive opportunity because like, think about migration's only increasing. So the amount of people leaving Africa is actually increasing. Like you have 1.3 billion people today. It's going to be 2.5 billion by 2050. 2.4 million people leave the African continent every year right now. That number is only going to increase, especially to Europe, to Middle East, to the United States, of people leaving the continent for better opportunities abroad. So we are going to have the largest global workforce. So think about the people who need to be nurses or other service industries that will need to be serviced by folks from the African continent. I think that's a big opportunity that's going to be created for us. So even though, yes, there's a lot of competition, I think the market is super big and super wide open. And it's a growing market that's even scaling even larger for where it is today.
And so what was that key insights that you were like, or even now, what would you say that Nala does best?
We're probably best at payment reliability and probably FX.
Okay.
So FX affects the rate that people get charged when they send money. So in most of our markets, we're the cheapest. And if we're not the cheapest, we'll tell you who's cheaper than we are. So like in our app, we have this thing where it's a compare rates feature. It's one of our most popular features. And I mean, it was very controversial. And I was like, all right, we're going to do this. And the team was like, but Benji, what if we're not the best? I was like, we should tell people who's the best. So for example, if I open the app here, you can see like USA to Cameroon, it shows Nala as number one. If I go USA to Kenya, we're still number one. If I go USA to, let's say, Tanzania, we're not number one. So I'll tell you who's number one. And if you click on the question mark, it says, read that first sentence, under transparency statement.
We're always honest with our users, even when we're not the cheapest option.
Yeah. So we tell them, like, hey, look, this other company is cheaper than us, go use them. And this builds us more trust than other things in the company. Because people are like, okay, I trust Nala because even when they're not cheap, they'll tell me who to use. So it builds significant trust for us as a no-name brand in the market. So people are like, okay, the Nala way, the Nala style, the Nala personality is like love, but also honesty. So that's how we try to build a brand.
Yeah. There was a famous topic. I think we even talked about it on stage yesterday, where everybody says, oh, there's way too many fintech companies, in Africa. But then somebody, gave a comparison for the US with, 300 million people and then more than 2,000. And we're complaining with, Africa, and there's like 1 billion people, and there's about 900 fintech companies. But So, and then, you're saying that there's a lot of opportunity in fintech, but I'm like, so what's the opportunity there, right? I mean, and, we see the big giant Visa and MasterCard, have been there for decades and they've got a very significant, market share. And one wonders, is that the best thing for the market to have one or two people who just take over the entire market so that, they could be reliable? Or is it the best approach to have multiple options where, customers can have a lot more options? But then I'm also wondering, is there enough opportunities? What are the opportunities? Maybe we can dig deeper into that. What is still not solved?
Yeah.
The 99% that is.
Yeah, if I always say payments in Africa 1% built, and I really think that. I'll give an example. I think over the next 20 years, the most funded VC-backed type of business in Africa is still going to be fintech. Why? Because infrastructure is just so nascent. For example, in the United States, if you want to build Venmo, P2P payments app, you already have Plaid that exists. In Africa, you don't have Plaid. You're building Plaid and Venmo at the same time. I'll give you many examples. I have so many friends, like there's one guy, a friend of mine, who is trying to build a medical record company. Because in hospitals in Africa, you go to one hospital, like they don't have your records, or like maybe they have some paper record somewhere when you came here when you were 6 years old, and like they don't have that track history of like which doctor you met, what was the diagnosis you were given, blah, blah, blah. And that's a big problem. We don't have proper health records here in Africa. So let's say you go back to the hospital and you can't find that health record. So one of my friends building this company to digitize health records because it's a big need. Like we need to have software. So I can just look up like Benjamin Fernandes and like search, and I can see like, okay, here's his file. Or as I say, insurance companies where they can see the file across 5 hospitals. Yeah. Like let's say I'm not in the neighborhood. Let's say I'm not in Dar es Salaam, but I'm in Arusha, but there's a sister hospital, but I can look you up and I can still see your file in that hospital when I'm sick. So one of my friends was trying to build a digitization for a health record company. And when he was building this, he realized he had to build everything from scratch for these companies because they had nothing. It was just paperwork. Now you had to get them unified across all the different hospitals. Now you had to figure out a way to charge people for it. And there's no API that you can just connect to that collects money from wallets. So guess what? He's forced into becoming a fintech company. Now, because he's built all these records, like connections at the hospital, now he's building infrastructure for payments to healthcare for healthcare reasons. And now he's become, instead of a healthcare or medical records company, he's become a fintech, not by choice, but by nature of the market. So I have many friends like this. I have another friend who's doing this for school records and like school fees. But because he couldn't work with an API that was sufficient for school fees payments, he ended up building his own API for school fees payments. Now that is the same problem that's needed in not just Nigeria, but in Ghana, in Kenya, in Cameroon. So who's going to build those businesses there? Think about churches and mosques, collections at scale in Africa, right? 92% of Africans attend a religious service once a week, whether it's a church or a mosque. So now, if you think about that directly, how are you digitizing those payments? How are you sending proof of like tithe reminders or like, transactions that way? How you remind, hey, we have this orphanage project we're trying to chip in, like can everybody chip in into this pool of money we've already collected? How do you build transparency in finance in religious institutions? How do you build, so man, there's so like 500,000 things that you could build in fintech in Africa that will solve so many different types of problems. So I think that's why I say it's 1% built, is because, the last example I give is SaaS businesses, software as a service. Like in Africa today, you don't have direct debit charges on mobile money. Yeah. So let's say you want to sign up for a subscription for like your Substack, or whatever subscription it is, and you want to pay a monthly fee. That company still has to call you, hey, Yusuf, can you make sure you pay your 3,000 Rwandan franc this month? Yeah. And it's cost them so much money to do that. Whereas who's going to enable direct debits for mobile money wallets where like at the end of the month, 3,000 is removed and you directly charge for it? Yeah. Why isn't that built yet? So imagine when that gets built, imagine the plethora of software services companies that will exist in Africa. Imagine being able to direct debit for your Netflix account or without using a card, but using your mobile money wallet. See, these are all the things that will get built. But when that baseline infrastructure is solved, there's 500,000 more companies that will get built on top. Yeah. But you can do that in the US, you can't do that here.
Why is that?
I mean, because like in the US you have direct debit, so you can like charge a subscription fee, or in Europe too. Yeah. But like in Africa, that doesn't exist.
Why are the mobile money providers not working on
That's a fantastic question. I asked them the same thing.
That's crazy. And is that the reason why you guys started building Rafiki?
Yeah. So I never wanted to build infrastructure. We were just building on the consumer business. But then we started working with so many providers in Africa, and they were so unreliable. I'd get so annoyed because customers, we were chatting about this earlier in the car ride, but like the reason I have so many unread messages on WhatsApp, you see that number? Do you want to tell them the number?
1,680.
1,680 unread messages in WhatsApp. 1,000 of these are probably customers complaining. Oh, I sent money to this country. The money failed. You stole my money. Most likely is what that is. Now, I started getting these calls in the middle of the night constantly. And I was like, dude, like, surely I'm not the only CEO that's facing this problem, because like we're all using the same infrastructure players locally. Then I started digging. I was like, well, what's the actual problem? Why are these payments failing? So it's a lot of human error. So for example, let's say I work with an aggregator in Uganda or in Tanzania, and I pre-fund them, let's say on Wednesday, because the largest transactions are always going to be on Fridays. Pre-fund them on Wednesday, but the person in the treasury team forgot to pre-fund my account, and then they go home on Friday afternoon. Now, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there's no float in the account. So all the payments are not getting dispersed. They're all failing. So I'm calling the CEO of the business. I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? All the payments to you guys, like $1 million has failed. Like, what happened? And he's telling me, oh, sorry, David or Irene or Rachel forgot to pre-fund your account. Don't worry, it'll be done on Monday. Monday? Bro, my customers don't care. My customers are calling me, abusing me, swearing at me, like, you stole my money, you're a thief, you're a scammer. And we started to see this, and the bigger the company got, especially its volumes increased, the more that happened. And I was like, surely we've got to solve this problem. So we started applying for license locally in each local market and jurisdiction. And I started to realize, I was like, oh, this is not just a problem we face, but many other companies face this issue, because a lot of the local providers for payouts don't build great software. And they don't build things like name validation checks. So for example, if I'm sending the money to Yusuf and I enter your phone number, but I just put the name Yusuf, like it's going to proceed to send. But if I can't say like, hey, are you sure you want to send money to Irene Jacob? And like, I'm like, oh wait, before I hit send, like, hey Yusuf, is your name registered Irene Jacob? If it's not, then let me not send. Because 40% of transactions failing are because people send it to the wrong number. So name validation check APIs don't exist in most of these aggregators. So how do you enable that? So I think when we started to see this problem happen more and more, I was like, you know what, like, I'm not going to wait and like build. I'm basically the PM for my competitors. Like, I'm like telling them what to build and the order of priority and why they should build this. I'm like, we already have the license. We already built so much of it for our consumer business. Now my friends who run big remittance companies or global payroll business started calling, hey Benji, can we use you as Nala for payouts? I was like, oh, why? Like, oh, because you have better rates, or we've heard you're way more reliable. And I was like, sure. So they started using us, and we're much more reliable. And so that's how we close some of our largest customers. So MoneyGram, for example, is officially a live customer. Why would MoneyGram use Nala? Like, so we launched Rafiki, and Rafiki has grown quite a bit since. So it's our infrastructure business. We're trying to build local infrastructure across Africa.
Interesting. And I mean, I'm going to take a step back now, where I'm like, you just launched a new product, which could potentially be its own company in a way, right? Yeah. So I'm like, so you're essentially running two companies, right? First of all, do you feel like you've done everything for Nala, or you're like, okay, great, I can, do this, or you're, running everything at the same time? There's still so much to build for both, but also like, how do you juggle that as a founder? How do you convince your investors that, hey, we're about to attack this, huge infrastructure, problem without losing focus on the other consumer business?
Yeah, that's a great question. The way I look at it is, so last year I made this decision to split the company. So every employee is either on Team Nala or Team Rafiki, but under Nala Group. So Nala Group and then Nala and Rafiki. So many companies have done this before. So the way TransferWise does it is they have TransferWise Platform, which is their infrastructure business. They have TransferWise Business, which is a B2B business, and TransferWise Consumer, so which is the personal accounts. Other companies that have done this historically are like Block owns Cash App and Square. So Square is a merchant acquiring business. Cash App is their P2P payments business, which is consumer facing. So what we did is we decided to make the big split last year, which was very painful to do. But that's probably one of the best decisions we made, because historically we would have engineers shared. So like, let's say Yusuf is an engineer. He's working on like this new feature on the Nala app. And then tomorrow and for the next 2 weeks, he's working on like building an infrastructure integration in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So it's like, dude, like, there's no consistency. And so what we did is just like made the hard call to split the team, split the company. So that was probably the best decision, because it created the most autonomy. And that way, when teams can make decisions independently, the speed of execution is a lot faster. So I think it wasn't rocket science to do. We had to just make the hard call and rip the Band-Aid off. So I manage both directly right now. And my CEO and CTO, we split roles and responsibilities across companies, but everybody who works under those organizations is independent.
Yeah. Interesting. So going back to Nala, take me through some of the early days, early traction, right? Which country picked up first, right? Where was most money being sent to, and why was that?
Yeah. It was Kenya, because like Kenya was the first one you're allowed to send money to. So we did UK to Kenya first. Yeah. And
because you found the people outside of the mosque.
Yeah, exactly. The Kenyans were the first Kenyans, and then Clubhouse is the platform that I found people. I was pretty popular in Clubhouse. I think I have like 17,000 followers. Oh, wow. So that was, because all these Kenyans were like, yo, who's this Indian dude who speaks great Swahili? And so I just make jokes with Kenyans. And like, the fastest way I'd get customers was I'd open a Clubhouse. Do you use Clubhouse?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
I used to open a Clubhouse channel and ask a question that would get many people involved. And the question was, why are Kenyan men so faithful? And I just like put that as a title, like just like it's like, right, just throw the grade. Okay, then just wait and watch. It's like all the men would join, like, yeah, exactly. And like all the women were like, no, Kenyan men are trash. And then you're like just there, like unmuting and speaking Swahili, like, I would like to understand why. And then unmute, and people start arguing with each other. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm launching this company called Nala. Like you drop your pitch in there. Do you know anybody in London? And like that's how I got a lot of our customers too. So the Clubhouse is a big channel for us. So Kenyans, yeah. Actually, there's a lot of people probably listen to this. There are probably my earliest customers came from Clubhouse.
Yeah. And one thing that I have to commend you is that I think you really figured out how to be a CEO of a B2C company. Right? Because your personal brand is huge, right? And I would assume that helps a lot in terms of being able to bring customers in, because people are just following you and then they're like, okay, great, let me find out what he does, right? And then let me find out if I can actually use this app. Now I'm based in London. Maybe I used to follow you maybe when I'm in, Kigali. I couldn't use maybe Nala to send money anywhere else. But now I'm in London. I'm like, yeah, I know Benjamin. Let me download Nala and start using it. So personal branding, was it intentional or was it by accident?
I think it was a mix of both. I don't recommend it for everybody. I don't think most people should do it at all, actually, because you're just going to give yourself this false pressure and then pressure to perform, because you're going to wake up and like, what did I post today? Yeah. And yeah, so I think it kind of, and then I just started, I think maybe I'm decent at it. And
I think you're very good at it.
It's like, thank you. But I would just like say stuff like I was trying to be, what's going on and like, how do I, say something that, would be relevant. So for example, I'll give you an example that worked really well for us. In 2022, we were about 8 employees at the company. Okay.
2022?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. You guys grew like crazy.
Yeah, it was, man, the last 20 months, like from 7 people to 150. It was like, wow. Yeah, it's been a pain. So I remember I think it was March or April 2022, all the fintech starts crashing globally. So people who are pulling out from like all their deals they had signed. And I remember being on the train in London. I'm like, do you know what? One day we're going to sponsor this train, the London Tube. And I was like, yeah, Benji just talks so much, blah, blah, blah. So I actually started hitting up the guy, the company that called Global that does the train. And let's try to hang out with him. I was like, how much is it? He's like, it's this much. I'm like, yeah, dude, I can't afford that. So then one day, I remember in April, he called me. He's like, Benji, 2 of my biggest clients just pulled out. I have a campaign that starts next week. so I don't have anything to put. If you give me your designs by tomorrow and confirm, then I'll put you on the tube for like 80% less than the cost.
Wow.
So I was like, let me think about it. He's like, yeah, but you got 1 day to decide. Thought about it. I talked to my CEO. I talked to my CTO. We're like, I'm not sure. I'm like, guys, I think we should do it. And yeah, but we should hire an agency to like think about the design and what we want to say. I'm like, no, I got it. And what are we going to do? So my idea was, let's write African sayings in local languages in London. And why? Because when people see something that's different and that relates to them, they're going to take a picture of it and post it in their WhatsApp group. And that's going to give us credibility and distribution. And it's going to give us talkability because people will talk about the brand. I say we should not put any screenshots. Don't say, here's the app, download the app, best. I was like, let's just focus on a funny saying. So for Kenyans, we put Tumana Yokotolea, which is like send money to withdraw. For Ghanaians, we put why Nala's rates are like Ghanaian jollof better than everybody else's. Was a dig in Nigeria.
Yeah.
For Nigerians, we put I don't japa, which means I don't like run away from Nigeria. Or being broke is no joke, but like in Ghanaian pidgin English. And then for Rwanda, they put Kigali we share. So all these things are all about like love or like a little bit of banter with relationships and so on. And we started putting it in the tube. And all of a sudden, I started seeing famous people, famous influencers in Rwanda tweet about it. Like, oh, somebody sent me this, that it was in the train in Rwanda. And it's a train in London about Rwanda. And all of a sudden, like, people start talking about our brand. And it was doing exactly what they wanted them to do. Because people who had come to my events in London that didn't sign up for the app, once they saw us on the tube, were like, oh, Benji, like, congrats, man. I'm so proud of you. I just started using Nala today. And I was actually mad because I'm like, man, I've known you for a year. Come to like 4 events, ate food for free, and still never use Nala.
Yeah.
But now you see it on the tube, people thought we were a legit company. And so things like that, coming back to branding, has helped massively. I remember when I came last to Rwanda for the Commonwealth, the first time to Rwanda was Commonwealth Head of Government's Conference. I actually wore this shirt. And I was on a panel, like it was like Boris Johnson and all these other people, like the Prime Minister of the UK. I wore the shirt. Man, there's a whole news article I'll send to you that some Rwanda news article wrote about Kigali we share.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this Tanzanian entrepreneur, he probably doesn't know what it means. Like, look, he's so lost.
Yeah.
And so that's helped the brand grow, like, because it created talkability. It created something that's relevant, and people are like, why is this Tanzanian wearing this? So it created this curiosity around it, and that's what helped with the brand build.
Yeah. Do you think those kind of ideas come from the background that you have working on on TV and in the media space? Do you think that's where it comes from? Like it just comes naturally to think about those ideas?
I think that helped, but I mean, I've not been in TV for like many years now, like 2015. So it's like 10 years actually now. I've not been in TV. So it was more, I like jokes, man. Like, I like banter. I like, all my close friends know I'm just like, they troll me all the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm like also trying to stay relevant, but that's where it comes from.
Yeah, no, that's good. So still on that topic of building a consumer business, many people are having the conversation that building a B2C business is one of the hardest things you can ever do. In Africa, harder. Yeah. Anywhere else in the world, hard, right? And then, B2B is the way to go, right? It's easier. Maybe the sales cycle is a bit longer, but at least you get customers and you get them for a couple of years and you can keep innovating there. But individual customers are not very loyal to one product. So if they see a better product that has better rates, they will just jump on it. Becomes very hard to retain them. So churn is really crazy. But what's your experience building a B2C business? What are the strategies that you've seen work and what doesn't work?
Yeah. So I have 2 perspectives. If you're building it abroad or versus building in Africa, because I have 2 different answers for that. Yeah. For us, what's worked really well is we personalize our style as Nala. So I call it the Nala way. Like I tell the team, like, what's the Nala way? This is the Nala way. So for example, our comms for a Rwandan is very different from our comms for a Kenyan, very different from comms for a Nigerian. Our tone of voice, our style, how we can communicate with the customer. Because what we want to do is make it feel like it's theirs. So when I hear people say, oh, Nala's mine, I was like, why? Like, oh, because on the day you guys have a good rate, the push notification is in pidgin Nigerian English and it's a joke.
Oh.
You know, or like Valentine's Day. I love Valentine's Day because we make all these like sayings about like, don't forget to send your babe money, like, you know, in Swahili or something like that. And, or like in Kinyarwanda, and people screenshot it and tweet it. They're like, oh, I love this. This made my day. And that makes me so happy to see, because that's the whole objective. I'm like, that's the Nala way. That's the Nala style. Like make, you know, because even so today at the conference, one lady came up to me and she's like, Benji, like my team always talks about the Nala way or the Nala style.
Yeah.
Like how you guys like make these jokes and so on, because you make people feel like it's theirs. And so that's how we retain the customers, by building some aspect of personal loyalty for something that an international app like a TransferWise wouldn't do that. A MoneyGram or a Western Union wouldn't really do that. You know, so I'm like, how do we make sure that that's our style, that's our flavor that we do? And like, that's what we become known for. So that's helped a bunch. Now, B2C in Africa, I would agree. I think I would definitely build more B2B if I was in Africa, because, you know, you need massive scale for venture-backed returns. So unless you're expecting like 2 to 3x growth, like after year 5 or year 6, you know, but when you raise venture capital money, they expect 50x returns. It's like, are you going to grow your business 50 times? And what does that look like? You know, and then B2C is a lot harder. Especially on the continent, especially, you know, it's tough for me to say this, but you can't sell services so people can't afford those services. Like I'll give you a context of one data point. I don't know if it's fully accurate, but somebody was telling me this. Indonesia has, I don't know, like 200 million people. I don't know what the exact amount is. But Indonesia has 1 million people who earn more than $25,000 a year. Africa has 1.3 billion people, but has only 1 million people who earn more than $25,000 a year.
Wow.
Today. So, and it's fragmented. All those million people aren't all in Nigeria or in Ghana and Kenya or you know, South Africa. They're all fragmented. They're in like a couple hundred here, a couple thousand there, a couple 100,000 there. Like, you know, it's very different. So how do you expect to build a scalable consumer tech business that is going to make you a lot of money when the group that you're trying to service isn't that wide at scale? Because it forces you to be Pan-African from the beginning. Yeah. Because you got to find all those customers. And being Pan-African from the beginning is very expensive. So that's the perspective that I think about with consumer. So I do think in Africa, it's definitely more on the B2B side for now. However, I am optimistic because we have the largest population in the world and fastest growing population, the largest growing population in the world, and it's going to be the largest population by 2050. Yeah. The middle class is also growing. So middle class will grow, which means they'll also launch businesses and hire people, which means the overall net income of Africa is going to increase. So Africa today is where India was like 15 years ago, in my opinion, from an income perspective. Yeah. So the good news is it's growing, and the people, you can still start that same consumer company in 5 years and be massively successful.
5 years.
Yeah.
In 2030. But is there something that still would work right now in B2C?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of things, but it depends on the scale. Like so many things will work. Yeah. Like, okay, how big do you want this to be? Do you want this to be a $10 million business a year? Cool, you can get it there. Do you want this to be a $100 million business a year? That's a bit tougher. Yeah. You know, do you want this to be $1 billion business a year? That's like M-Pesa level. Yeah. You know, like, do you have the cash to get it to M-Pesa level? If you do, then great. Like, you know, if you don't, then okay, what happens? Yeah. So it all depends on the ambition of what you want to build. There's nothing wrong building a small business, just to clarify. But I just want to say, like, if you're raising venture-backed money, there's expectations for mass return and mass growth.
So one of the things that I was thinking about is, so from your experience being an entrepreneur, right? Because I really want to touch on that question specifically. Do you want your business to be a $10 million business, $100 million business, $1 billion business, right? What are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself before you build any type of business, right? Should you ask yourself a question around how big do you want this to be? Should you just focus on, I'm going to focus on solving the problem? How big it becomes might be the product of how hard we work. You know what I mean? Because sometimes I always wonder, for entrepreneurs who might be listening and watching us, who are thinking about, let's say, building a business, what are some of the things they need to ask themselves? Is it, I want to build a business that's going to be backed by a VC, or I just want to build a business that's going to make a profit? So I'm like, are those the right questions you should be asking yourself? Or should you just be saying, I've identified a problem, I know I have the skill set to build a great solution for it. I know there might be 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people who desperately need and will be willing to pay for this. Let me start with those. If I get 100, that's going to be great. And then, from there, because I kind of feel like because of how popular, let's say, VC-backed companies are becoming, everybody feels like they want to build a VC startup. So then they don't even start by asking, okay, great, to build a VC company, you need to really look at the market. It's not even about the solution or whatever. It's about the market. How big is it, right? Then you start from there. So I'm just wondering, like, what are the questions that you would tell a aspiring entrepreneur right now to think about to be able to come up with a great idea of a startup?
Yeah. Well, the first question I always ask people is they should ask themselves why 5 times. Like, why do you want to start this company? Okay. Why? Okay. Why? And see what their answer is by the 5th why. And based on that, you can kind of tell, like, is this a vanity thing? Is like, I just want to be cool. I just want to raise a VC-backed company. Because that's the case, tell them not to start a company at all. Like, if you do it for the praise and not your purpose, you'll never do anything right. You always make the wrong decisions, especially as you're building the company. Additionally, if you're trying to build a company because you want to raise VC-backed company, you should not be a founder. If you want, because you think it's cool, you should not be a founder. The scale, at the beginning when you're thinking about starting the company, the biggest question is, can I get to product market fit? Which is a definition in some form of having repeatable usage where customers are paying you and referring other customers to your product, and it's scaling and growing naturally on itself without you guys having to make as much noise about it. Like, that's ultimately how I look at product market fit. Like, do we have high retention? Are customers coming back? Are customers referring their friends to our product? Is there high usage? Like, these are all the questions I as we define what product market fit means for us at Nala. Now, getting to product market fit could take you many years, right? So when you finally get to it, you know what it is because you're going to see the business start growing naturally on its own. And when that moment happens, it's for you to ask yourself, okay, how much more energy do I have? Let's say you're 40 years old right now and you finally get to product market fit at, like, when you're 46, okay? Are you ready to run for 10 more years? Or do you want to put like 3 more years into it and try to sell the business, which is totally fine. So that question only you can answer, but you should think about it that way because it's going to take a while to get to product market fit. And that's normal. It's not a you thing, it's not that you're a bad CEO. That's totally normal. But most people like compare my year 9 in the game to their year 0 and be like, oh, I'm a bad founder because look what Benji did. I'm like, bro, like, I've been at this for 9 years. Like, relax, And
time is gonna come.
So yeah, exactly. Like, great things take time. You know, there's a lot of school fees I paid for all the mistakes I made. It's like so many mistakes, man. So I don't want them to have those mistakes, but I think too many people like expect to be successful in year 0, year 1, and then when they're not, they're like, oh, they start giving excuses. They're like, oh, Yusuf is like, it's because Yusuf has more money. Like, yo, listen, there's people who've raised way more money than I'd have, but we make way more revenue than they do. Like, it's ultimately like how you make decisions, right? So that's what's going to matter most. So I definitely don't think you should start the company just because it's cool.
Yeah. And on the topic of product market fit, right? I mean, that's what every founder is chasing, right? So I'm wondering, product market fit, how much should you be very, very religious about the vision you started with? Because as founders, you start and you say, I really want to do this, right? Which I strongly believe is not the right way to go about it. Or you fall in love with your problem or with your solution, right? And not the problem. And you're like, this is what I want to achieve, all right? And you start working on it, all right? And maybe the market does not respond really well to that specific vision, right? And the market starts taking you in different places, which I'm assuming as a B2C business is even horrible because every customer wants something specific for themselves, right? Yeah. Then how much should you, follow the market to achieve product market fit? right? And how much feedback is enough for you to say, okay, 50 customers have requested for this, let's actually build it? Or is it 100? Is it 1,000, right? When do you know that this is what the market wants us to pivot into, so we can get that product market fit? Or should you be very religious about certain things? Yeah, you're like, we will never change these fundamental things, but we're willing to be very flexible with other things, right? Because I feel like it's also another problem when it comes to achieving product market fit, where some founders are like, no, the world will, believe in my solution, right? At some point, they don't get it. They will get it one day. And other founders are like, hey, look, I've tried, to pitch this and they were not buying. So let me go back home, change it a little bit, come back and be humble, and so I'm just trying to understand, because I would assume it's safe to assume that you guys have achieved product market fit.
And on the consumer side,
on the consumer side, right? So that's what I want to understand. Like, how do you, how, is it a science? Is it an equation? What is it?
I think it's more, the first thing I said is like, ask yourself why, right? What is your why? Like, why are you even building this company? If your why is truly to solve a problem that you really care about, how you get there doesn't really matter if you feel like you're solving that problem still. However, I will always back a founder more if they face that same problem themselves. Like, I love meeting founders that tell me like, oh, I'm working on this because my grandma passed away because there was this issue at the hospital. And I don't want anybody else to have that issue again. Or I'm working on this because when I lived abroad, I had this issue and I couldn't get a work permit because visas were a problem. So I'm working on making it easier for migrants to get visas and work permits in Saudi Arabia. I don't know, just giving an example. Because they face that problem themselves and it pained them, they're naturally going to want to figure it out. And that type of entrepreneur is the ones I love backing. It's like, okay, because they felt that pain themselves, or it affected them in a certain personal way that they're like, do you know what? This is something I really want to do. Now, that's not always the case for the best entrepreneurs, but like, it's something that I have seen as a pattern. So the first thing is the why. The second thing is like, have they experienced that problem themselves, and like focus on like what's the why for why they're doing this. The third thing I'll look at is, I do think they should fall in love with the problem and not the solution, because like that's the most dangerous way to build a company, in my opinion. Because people use this famous Henry Ford quote. Is like, oh yeah, well, you remember when Henry Ford said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. I'm like, dude, you can't use that principle and apply it to everything. Like, yeah, so people are going to want crypto on the blockchain with dropshipping and, with stable coins backed, because they're going to move money tomorrow that way. They just don't know. They're not smart enough yet.
Yeah, I'm a visionary. I'm Steve Jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
They think that's what Steve Jobs did.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude, like every single founder I admire was just making up as their goal. Literally making up as their goal. Every single founder I admire today, I've got to meet a lot of my people I admire, and like they've become like these mentors to me. And I put them on a certain pedestal. But then when I talk to them about certain challenges, I'm like, hey, do you remember in 2010 when I saw this on the news about you? How did you deal with this? And what they tell me versus what I saw on the news were two different things. Because like on the news, I was like, yeah, this guy's a genius, or this girl's a genius. Like they did handle it this way. But then when I talked to them, like, yo, Lucas, honestly, man, I know what I was doing. Like I was just like weighing in and making it up. And I was like, oh, okay. So it normalizes those sort of challenges, because it's not a you thing, it's a normal thing as a founder. So I would definitely not lean into, oh, this idea sounds cool, I'm just going to stick to it. That's a very bad way to build a company, and don't build a company that way.
And when it's time to give up on an idea or a business, right? Because I think there's also a problem where you stick around for too long, right? There's this contradiction, right? Where in entrepreneurship, we all go on panels and we talk about, hey, you have to have resilience. I've been doing this for 9 years, and this is when we actually achieve our product market fit. But then there's also a lot of people who are wasting their time and wasting their energy and resources on an idea that doesn't work. Maybe they're chasing vanity metrics and they figure out a creative way to stay alive in one way or the other, and they keep chasing this solution that they really want to put out in the world, and they just have unlimited funding to keep masking it as if it's working, right? So what I'm wondering is, how do you know when it's time to actually give up? Because sometimes you have to be like, this is not going to work. right? Even though the idea is so great, we need to shut it down so I can focus on, I can take the learnings from this, so I can focus on another business. And maybe the second one is going to be great. The whole comment around second time founders are, much better, I guess, be invested in.
I'll tell you, Arthur, I'm probably a fifth time founder based on that. We pivoted 4 to 5 times before we got to this business. We were doing, first I wanted to build this lending company, like, I was like, let me do peer-to-peer. It's like, first I was like lending, and then like data analytics from like telecom data and like lend to them. And I was like, why not do peer-to-peer lending? Because we do that for like donations for like weddings and funerals. So like, why not I built peer-to-peer network and lending? Then I wanted to do domestic payments, and we piloted that. Then I wanted to do the savings accounts. Then I wanted to do like mint.com, like where you could see all your finances, because people have multiple mobile money wallets, and like you can see your bank account and your mobile money wallet and your whole net worth in one app. And I shut down. I think the hardest thing, and most founders pivot too late. And I think that's the danger, is waiting too long. I had to take the feelings out of it. And I think it's harder for you as the founder to do that versus calling a spade a spade. When that intern of mine told me, what problem are we solving?
Was he just curious, or was
he was curious. He was just more like asking me as a question. He wasn't like trying to challenge me at all. But I remember going home that day. That was in 2020. And I was like, you know what? He's right. Because I could have answered something eloquently. But then when I went home and I really thought about it, I was like, you know what? He's right. We're not solving anything here. Retention is so bad. People aren't coming back. People don't love what we've built. We've not made something people need. And I knew I needed to pivot the business again.
Did you wake up in the morning and do it, or?
No, like, it didn't happen overnight. It was just like, okay. I started feeding the idea to my COO, and I was like, and my CTO, I started telling like, hey, I think we can pivot the business, and then have to get them on board first. And then it's a discussion you have to have with the company. And that one was tough. I remember telling the company we're pivoting to cross-border payments. People quit on me.
They were like, lack of focus.
Like, it's not happening. Once again, here Benji goes, like one of his stories, like, once again, Benji had an epiphany, like, great, like, good job. I'm like, cool, those same people call me back for a job now. So like, I can understand why. It's also very demotivating when you work on something for a while and then like you have to shut it down and you like spend hours building it.
Yeah.
It's very demoralizing. And me, like you said, I'm public. Yeah. People in Tanzania know me. Like, I'm very, like, I have 450,000 people on Instagram, right? And so when we were shutting down the old product, can you imagine what my Instagram feed looked like and my Twitter feed looked like? Benji was trash. Benji, I knew he couldn't build a company. I knew this guy would fail. This guy can't build anything. And you're waking up in the morning, you're reading these tweets and you're scrolling, you're like, You're like, okay, wow. Like, this is, it's like, you're like, wow, okay, wow. And you like still show up and be 100% at the office, despite seeing all the negative stuff from when you shut down the old product that people are using. That's tough.
How do you not lose energy? 5 pivots.
Yeah.
How do you not just be like, okay, great, let me just focus on something else. Like, let me work on another angle.
So like the first like 2 to 3 pivots were like smaller.
Okay.
So like more idea based. Yeah. Like I hadn't built anything in lending. So like, I think I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do this. I'm going to peer-to-peer lending. So I just drew mock-ups and I interviewed people, but like I interviewed them for like 3 months.
Yeah.
So it felt like I wasted time. How you don't use energy, like, goes back to your why. For me, it's, okay, did we build payments for the next billion?
Yeah.
And why are we doing this? And if you can't answer that, like, I think a lot of the energy comes from that. Like, I wake up in the morning, I already know what I want to do. Like, I have that type of energy. Like, I already know, like, wow, we're planning this. Okay, I got to solve this out. Like, that's the type of energy I wake up with. So, also having other founder friends keeps you very mentally sane. The panel I had this morning with Prajeet and Madhu, man, I really admire these guys. Like, Prajeet has 1,000 employees, Madhu has 1,500 employees. Like, Prajeet's company worth over $1 billion, Madhu's $800 million. And, the way that they've grinded for over 10 years to get it to where it is today. Like, what they're doing in year 10, I'm doing what they did in year 2 in my year 10.
Wow.
You see? So if I really wanted to compare, it's the enemy of joy. It's the thief that takes away from your like actual, you know, hey, look, we've made a lot of good progress. Like, I don't think we're successful yet from our ambition for what's our why.
Yeah.
But if I compare it that way, I'm like a complete failure. And like, wow, in 10 years, they got to $1 billion valuation. In 10 years, I'm very far from $1 billion valuation, you know? And if I compare it that way, like, you will never build any company.
Yeah.
You would just kill yourself. So like having founder friends, like before the panel, Prajeet, Madhu, and I just like sat down the night before and just talked for a few hours. It was so good because like every problem I faced, they had faced too. Like, oh yeah, I had this like 6 years ago, it's a small issue.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you deal with it? And so making sure you have founder friends who are one step ahead of you is super important to your journey, mostly mentally.
Yeah.
Because man, it's a dark place you can get to very fast.
I can imagine. And tell me about growing the team to 150 people. I mean, not overnight, but you know, almost what it feels like overnight.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things. How do you hire people? What do you look for in people that work very directly with you? And also, what does it feel like to have 150 people depend on you doing a great job for them to pay their rent and pay for their livelihoods?
Yeah. How do I hire? Before it was a lot harder. Now it's even harder too, because it's hard for many different reasons. Before we weren't getting applications. So like a year and a half ago, I was maybe getting like 20 applications for one role. Now in London, I get 400 applications for one role.
In London, wow.
In Nairobi, I get 1,000 applications for one role. So can you imagine my people team having to filter through people applying? It's so hard.
Yeah.
And there's times that I'll meet somebody like a couple of years later, like, and I'm like, wow, this person's super talented. I wonder, we should try to hire them. And I talked to them like, hey, brother, you ever consider working in Nala? It's like, yeah, dude, I applied 2 years ago. You guys never responded to me in my application. I was like, oh, okay. So I meet a lot of things like that. So hiring is probably one of the hardest things any founder has to do, because when you're small, you start with generalists. When you start scaling, you find specialists.
Yeah.
Because you can't afford specialists when you're small. When you're small, your budgets are limited. We had interns. We had random person like, hey, at the university, hey, do you want to come and do your internship with us? You know, we pay them just food and transportation money. Like, we didn't have any like resources to do that. But that's how, like, that guy I mentioned to you, he's still at the company. The guy who challenged me on like, what problem are we solving? He's still today. He's still there today. He's one of my longest serving employees. He owns like one of the most equity compared to anybody in the company.
Wow.
And he's just this little kid from Dar es Salaam that came up as an intern, and I like brought him under my wing and tried to build the company with him. So now when you're trying to hire specialists, it's also really dangerous, because people feel like, oh, Yusuf, you don't believe in me anymore? You don't think I can lead this function anymore? Because if the business has grown 72 times in 3 years, has every single person, including myself first as the CEO, also grown 72 times in 3 years? And what did they do to grow 72 times in 3 years?
Yeah.
Are they also talking to other people, like fast growing tech startups, to also like, hey, okay, how did you handle this issue? Like, how did you make sure like you adapted? I've never managed anybody in my life. Now I'm managing 3 people on my team. Like, what happens then? Like, how do I give harsh feedback? How do I fire somebody? I've never fired somebody in my life. All these things, your role, your personality, your style, your function changes massively in a short time period. The cost of a mistake and a bad decision becomes really expensive. Like, one treasury mistake for us a year ago used to cost us $3,000. One treasury mistake that would happen, like, let's say on a Friday, now costs $150,000 to $160,000.
Wow.
So is my treasury team grown in a way that mistake won't happen? You know, so I'm just giving treasury an example, but like every function of the company is quite similar. So like the bigger the user base gets, the bigger the cost of a mistake. Like, think about my marketing team. One of my copywriters was somebody from Dar es Salaam writing copy. Spelling errors, grammar issues. Now you're sending an email to 500,000 people. The cost of a mistake, you look really stupid. People don't trust you.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I think those are the things where we had to like, okay, well, let's really update and upgrade. And like, you know, it's tough. Like, I've had to lay off a lot of people, like, especially if I didn't see them growing in a way that they could have been growing at the company. And it's not necessarily they're a bad person. They got us to where we are today, but were they able to scale as the company scaled? Because, a slow cog in an engine slows down like an entire car. So you're trying to ship fast and one part of the business is really slow. If you find yourself reviewing that person's work, you might as well do it yourself. They shouldn't be working for you. So that's the question I ask. And then the one question I tell every manager to ask themselves is only one phrase. It's what YC always told me. They said, for everybody who reports to you, you should ask yourself one question. Do you trust their judgment? And if the answer is no, fire them. So YC told us. And I was like, wow, that's profound. Because if you weren't there in that meeting, in that decision, would you trust them to make the best decision for the company's success? And if you answer maybe, then it's a no. So that's how I think about that principle. And, how you think about hiring and scaling a team is with that factor. Now, I couldn't say that same principle at the early stage because it's a different standard. So at early stage, you're way more lenient. You're like, okay, fine, cool, do this together, blah, blah, blah. Yusuf, I'll tell you this, with 150 people today, I work much harder now than I worked at when we had 7 employees.
Why is that?
Because the cost of a mistake when the company is changing so much, functions are changing. Like a year ago, I had 11 teams. Today I have 19 teams at the company. So all these people, first time manager, first time this, first time that. You're trying to promote internally, but then they're not so good at their job. So you have to find somebody else every weekend. You saw me when I arrived here. As soon as you saw me, that person I walked in with, I was interviewing her for a job. And then I went and I did 4 interviews on Sunday after church in a row. Do I want to spend my Sunday doing interviews? No, because I don't have time during the week. So I have to make the time during the week to interview people. I spend 30 minutes of my time recruiting and interviewing candidates because the team you build is the company you built. It's like football. Do you have your Cristiano Ronaldo playing for you? Do you have your Messi playing for you? Do you have your Danny Welbeck playing for you, trying to score goals? Are you going to win the league with Danny Welbeck or are you going to win the league with Cristiano Ronaldo?
Yeah.
So you need everybody that's going to be gelling in the team, but the team is going to change a lot. So the way I look at VC funding is the way I look at sports. Do you follow football?
A little bit.
Manchester City, 2008, get this huge funding, right? That's like VC. Now Man City is a no-name club, is trying to compete with Manchester United, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, who've been winning the league for many years. So they took 8 years in order for them to win their first title. Because they brought Robinho in, it didn't work. They brought Aguero in, okay, kind of where they were at. De Bruyne in. They brought in all this, Mario Balotelli, all these guys. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't, right? So that's when you're building a company, it's the same thing. You're going to bring in a superstar that is a big person from another company. This person joined us from Visa, great. They're probably one of my worst employees because they couldn't fit into the team style. They couldn't gel with the team members. Then I have to exit them. The people are like, oh, Benji, why are you making poor decisions? So then I called one of my founder friends who's a unicorn founder. I was like, yo, did this happen to you too? He's like, yeah, man, it happened all the time. It's not a you thing. So then I'm like, oh, okay. Because then my team was like, oh, are you just a bad judge of character if you keep bringing in people who aren't working out, we keep laying off? And then I asked my friends, no, for X role, they hired 4 different people in a year for that role until they found the right one. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But obviously when your team sees it, they're like, oh man, Yusuf doesn't know what he's looking for. He's just, poor judge of character and so on. Because even if you bring that person in, can they still grow? Because the plane is flying, and you're putting new wings on while the plane is flying. And you're filling petrol while the plane is flying. Is the pilot panicking while you're fixing a wing? If the pilot's panicking, the whole plane panics.
Yeah.
And that's your role as a CEO. So okay, are we making sure that we're still taking off? So yeah, that's how I look at those things.
So in this day and age where AI is becoming super helpful, I would say, to a lot of our companies in terms of being able to cut down cost and so on. And also there's this conversation going on where people are like, when you raise VC money, automatically you start hiring a bunch of people, right? So how do you strike the balance between being is everyone that we're hiring important and needed? Can we automate that role, maybe using AI so we can cut down costs? So how do you know every day? Do you ask yourself that question every day where we're like, okay, 150 people, do we need this many people? Maybe we need more. That would be another thing to ask yourself. But yeah, is that something that you're thinking about? Like, is AI going to make you potentially think about some roles that might not be as important? Is that something you're thinking about?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that we've already built with AI and automated in the company, from like reconciliation, from compliance checks, from like auto detection, from a bunch of things on customer support and operations that we already do today with AI. So that's helped us a bunch. But when it comes to picking who to hire and how to hire, there's no company in the world that will tell you that they're overstaffed.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, yeah, but nobody will ever say. But everyone's like, oh yeah, we need to hire another person to do this. And everybody will pitch you roles like, yeah, Yusuf, we need to, like, the reason we didn't get this done, I'm like, what did you get done? This is the business priority. What are you contributing to this business priority this week that's going to move the needle forward for the company? If you can't answer that question, you shouldn't work here. So I've had to change my style. I was way too nice earlier. Now the stakes get very different. And people are, oh, Yusuf, you've changed, blah, blah. I'm not changed. You've got to do what's best for the business. Are we growing this company? Yes or no? If somebody can't tell you what they shipped this week, why? What are they doing? 50 hours a week. What are you doing? What did you get done this week? And so style and tone, like that's what I tell people, like, don't work at Nala. It's not the easiest place to work because we have very big ambitions and we have very high standards. And so if you want to be challenged, come work at Nala. If you're used to volatility and stuff changing frequently, you come work at Nala. If you want a cozy job, sitting at a bank, showing up every day, going to fill in some spreadsheets and going home, don't work at Nala. And I tell people this before they even come and join the company. I was like, don't work here. Because I'll give you a quick story. When we raised that $10 million round, I asked investors, how many employees do you think we have? And every investor said 30, 35. We had 7. I had 7 employees when I raised $10 million. Why? Because they're like, wow, the capital efficiency ratio for Nala and Benji is insane. Before we raised this $40 million round, we were profitable. We made more money in revenue than money we've raised. So when we compared to all of our competitors, our capital efficiency and revenue generated per dollar spent is higher than all of our competitors. So all investors are like, yo, like, but this all starts because what's your largest burn? Your team is your largest burn. So sure, maybe I was a bit too stingy with a few things here and there. Fine, I agree. Like, I've changed a little bit in terms of like, okay, cool, I have to be a little bit more lenient here and then I'd be willing to pay a little bit more for higher quality talent and so on. But the indecisiveness is way more costly for us as a business and dangerous. And then when you have teams that slow you down, they shouldn't work at your company. So time is always your enemy as a startup. So yeah, like use AI tools as much as possible. But anybody who's saying like, oh, we need to hire 50 more people, I actually fired nearly 10% of staff after we raised the $40 million.
10%?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was like, guys, like underperforming, like everybody knows. Every single person in the company knows who the underperformers are. You have to remember that as a CEO. Like people aren't dumb. People know who's pulling their weight. Like I'll read you a message from one of my employees. Literally, it says, please give me a second here. It says, hi Benji, following up from our one-on-one the other day. It's very frustrating for me to show up 100% at work and very demotivating when blank and blank on my team aren't also pulling their weight to the same level and extent. I've given you many examples of this and why I feel this way. It's not motivating showing up to work when they aren't also pulling their weight, especially for how many hours I put into this business. So when other people feel like they're putting in the work and other people on their team is slowing them down or dragging them down, people get demotivated, especially high performers. A players hire A players, B players hire C players. So if you have a B player, they're going to hire people not as productive as them. So even at our company, not everybody can hire. You have to earn your right to hire. And you earn your right to hire by performing really well. And then you earn the right to hire.
So I'm sitting here and I'm trying to, identify what are some of the things that are in this cocktail that is Benji. Like what made Benji this capital, efficient CEO, right? Right. What made Benji this amazing, storyteller, amazing, at fundraising, amazing at building a team and growing these numbers to 500,000 people. So I'm trying to find out. Do you ask yourself that question? Like, what are some of those things that you believe now when you were thinking about it, when you're doing all these things that you're like, okay, great. That thing shaped me into this. This specific experience shaped me into this. Maybe some people have said that maybe a boss back in the days, maybe my parents, maybe something. Do you know what, is in this cocktail?
I don't know, man. Like, I think faith is a large part of it. Yeah, man, I see a lot of trouble in school. If you talk to anybody who went to high school with me, and I think I hold the record for most times in the principal's office still today. And my grades are public, so it's not like a made up story. You can see them type in like Benjamin Fernandes A-level grades, Tanzania. It's publicly shared. And, I remember my teacher telling me in front of the whole class one day, he's like, Benji, at least try to get a D.
From an F.
Yeah. So when he said that, I remember it was Mr. McFarland. It's 8th grade in front of the whole class, he told me. And I was like, all right, you know what? One day I want to prove this guy wrong so badly. And I want to prove everybody in this class wrong. Because when people bet against you, it gives you so much fuel to prove them wrong. So as a founder, you get so used to getting so many no's that I remember when I applied to business school, I'll show you this email. I got rejected. And you know what I wrote in the email? I'll show you what I wrote. Check this out. I've never shared this publicly. So here, you can see this school. You can read the school name, right? What school is it? Okay, read that. Harvard. All right, I applied. And I responded to the rejection. Look at how what date? 2015, right? Read it out loud.
Thanks for your update. I accept my Harvard rejection. I believe you're making the biggest mistake of your life by not accepting me.
I applied to Oxford, same thing. Then they gave me a full scholarship, both. The following year, nobody replied to me, no reply. So, I like when people undermine my abilities. It motivates me a lot. Like, okay, I'll prove you wrong.
Yeah.
And even when people told me you can't build this cross-border payments business, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, hard to take, cool. I'll work really hard. And a lot of it comes instilled from values. Like my mom and my dad my mom always says this famous thing I've said in many interviews, always says, Benji, if you don't take responsibility, take orders. And that's the principle of life. Like, you don't take responsibility at school, I was put on academic probation. And I'm taking orders about studying and showing up for tuition and all this other thing. I'm going to I don't have recess time, I have to go to detention instead of recess time. I'm taking orders. If I don't perform well at work, I get put on a performance improvement plan. I'm taking orders. Or I get told my boss to tell me what to do. I'm taking orders. A really good employee doesn't get told what to do. They understand the vision, understand where the company is going. All right, hey Benji, here's my plan. What do you think? Cool, great, proceed. When the employee doesn't do well and you see your boss starting to tell you what to do, you're not doing what the company needs. So in any workplace, in anything, that's where that principle comes from. So, gratitude is something that, I think how I look at my life is, I think I'm a product of grace that's still in the process. Kindergarten to 12th grade, I was fully sponsored. Undergrad in America, I was fully sponsored. Stanford, I was fully sponsored, full scholarship. Stanford got a full scholarship to 8 African students a year. That's how I got there. And so I know I'm a product of grace still in the process. And because I'm a product of grace, I know I'm supposed to be responsible for what I've been given. And that's how when I spend money, the Bible tells me too much is given, much is required. If I'm spending that money at the company, I spend it like it's my own money. So I'm like, okay, do we need to buy that? Yes or no? Do we actually need to do that? Yes or no? And obviously, more recently, I've had to be like, okay, fine, let's get an office space. Okay, fine, let's buy standing desks. An office space. Like, yeah, exactly. Like work under a tree. Yeah, he's like, this is a work at your place. Like pay for your own electricity. I pay for you. I pay for your own internet. It's like, bro,
Sponsoring leisures.
so yeah, I think but then also when you have a lot of pain happen to you,
Yeah.
it's not easy. You get betrayed by employees. People see you raise money, try to steal money from you. People come and issue lawsuits. So when all this stuff starts to happen, it makes you have a lot thicker skin. And that's why you really need friends who also started companies, because you can go mentally very crazy very fast if you don't have people to talk to about these issues.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's very lonely.
Yeah. So Benji, everybody sees you,
Or founders like yourself who are very successful on big stages, meeting the president, meeting the king, going places where they can only dream to get to. And there's a young person somewhere out there, somewhere in Africa, who's like, I also want to build a tech company. I also want to be an entrepreneur so I can be like Benji. My question to you is entrepreneurship for everyone?
No. Definitely not. I think most people should not start a company. I think in Africa, you're forced to be an entrepreneur, not by choice, but by nature of the market, because there might not be enough jobs. But doesn't mean you have to build a massive business. It's start a small shop, a small business, doing something basic. But scaling, managing, dealing with people issues, growing teams, that pain is made for very few people. And everybody thinks they can handle that heat. When it starts to happen to you, imagine getting hit by 5 lawsuits in a week and trying to show up 100% the next day and be 100% in the office. Not many people can do that. And so even being on the stages, like for me, Yusuf, that's new for me too. Like, okay, meeting President Kagame, inviting to the State House. That's my first time getting invited to the State House. I didn't even expect to get invited to the State House. I was hanging out on Sunday. I got that email at 10 p.m. Hey, President Kagame would like to see you tomorrow. I'm like, he? Like, why me? That's literally what I asked. I said it to my mom. Like, I'm not sure why I got invited. Like, that's literally what I said to her. And, when God opens a door for you and wants to grace your life with that opportunity, God can take you places that nothing you have dreamed of could take you. And that's why I have such strong faith, is God's opened doors and graced my life with opportunities that I never saw myself having. I sit on stages today, I'm like, whoa. Like last week we were featured in Forbes top 50 companies globally. And I'm like, I used to read that list, the top 50 fintech list. I was like, maybe one day, maybe in a couple of years, maybe in 5 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And then you wake up and you're on that list. You're like, wait, me, our company, or everything we've done? And it's really important. And so I told my team, I said, look, we're still babies. So don't act like we've made it. We've not. I told the team, we can still die. I was like, 1 year from today, there might not be a Nala if we don't figure stuff out. Because the moment you have complacency come into the company, so does mediocrity. When mediocrity comes, you don't succeed as a building company. So every single time, every stage, every thing that you guys accomplish as a business, I like Drake, and Drake always says, the reward for hard work is more work. And I totally believe that, given what I've experienced.
I was going to say, who are you on the side of, Drake or Kendrick?
I really can't answer that question.
But Benji, thank you so much for making the time, and for all the work that you're doing on the continent, for the impact that you're making, all the people that you're employing, and changing the landscape of fintech on the African continent. So thank you very much for making the time, and it was a great time.
Thank you so much, man. And by the way, I have to say, for those who have families who live in the US, UK, Europe, that send money to Africa, please tell them to use Nala. I more want their feedback. So yeah, please, that'd be super helpful. That'd be my only ask to you as the audience. That's it.
Awesome. Cool, man. Cheers.